All right, we have Wendi Mormon here with us today, and her episode is over innovation, risk taking, and creative problem solving, which I think Wendi is so good at.
Chef's kiss.
So,
Thanks.
Wendi, can you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yes. As Lindsay said, my name is Wendi Mormon. I am the gifted coordinator and tech integration here at the Mercer County ESC. Spend most of my time as a gifted coordinator. I just finished year 10. I'm pretty sure year 10 in that role, but I've been with the ESC for a long, long, long time, since 1999. I was hired as a gifted intervention specialist at Marion Local and Parkway. For about the first 5 years, I did that. Then I went to Marion Local. And then 15 years later, I applied for this position and have been doing that ever since. Part of my job is tech integration, which is, I think, where I can be more creative and innovative, but it's not a huge part of my position at this point in time.
So, Wendi, before we get into like the meat of today, we're gonna have a question for you, just so they can like get to know you personally.
Okay.
Right, Wendi. So we've been giving everybody a different question every time because we get bored. And so we want you to tell us, how do you start your work day? Like, I want to be Wendi for a day. What does that? I do want to be Wendi for a day. I think that'd be
I
awesome.
do too.
I'd get a lot of stuff done. So just give us a day in the life of Wendi.
Well, most days start really early, between 4 and 5 a.m., because I'm most productive in the morning. So my alarm clock goes off usually by 5 for sure, for a variety of reasons. I coach at St. Henry, so a couple days a week we have to be up for lifting to go help with that. And the other few days, also, my son is getting up for lifting. So I am helping to make sure that he's up and off to do what he should do. And then either getting a little work done before I come to work, getting a workout in before I come to work, doing some laundry, whatever it is that needs done between those, like, that 5 a.m. to like 7 a.m. before it's time to kind of start figuring out how to head out the door. So
I'm always so jealous of when you come in because I feel like you have so much done before I've even gotten out of bed.
Laundry?
well, my children are almost 18 and 21. So, I don't have to mind to small children anymore.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can get on board with a workout before work. I do love moving before work. I can't believe you do like things before work.
well, it would be really great if those things happened before I went to bed.
Yeah.
That's like ideally, like,
Yeah.
you do that 15-minute refresh before you go to bed and then you don't even think about it when you get up. That does not happen at our house.
Well, what I was
So-
gonna say, I'm kind of more like the night owl version of that, where I go to bed, like the kitchen counter has to be like cleaned off because I don't want to wake up to that. Dishes in the dishwasher. I might have laundry, like at least folded.
I just go to bed.
I mean, I wish I could, but I just know if I wake up and it's like that, it drives me crazy. So that's probably why you in the morning are like, I just want this done before I go off to work.
Yeah. And getting here early is a bonus too. So if there are days where we can be here, love everyone that I work with. But if you get here before anyone else is, you can get a lot done.
You sure
because,
can.
You end up having to meet with somebody about something. So
Focus
in that
time.
first 30 minutes can be like, serious focus time.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how we can be like Wendi.
Okay, I'm going to try tomorrow. I
Okay.
can do this.
All right, Wendi, I'm going to be asking your first question. And all right, so how do you approach risk taking as a leader? Because I think you're really good at risk taking,
She's
even though
risky.
she like does not think that she's risk taking.
Well,
You
what's
definitely
fascinating is
are.
she's very even keeled.
Yeah.
So like, I trust you when you take the risk too. It's very strange. You're not like
Yeah.
anybody I know. Anyways,
I guess that's me. I don't know.
It's a good
That
thing.
is
Thank
a
you.
good thing.
I
Coming
think-
from Emily, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I'm not afraid to fail. So then if it's something that doesn't, and being very transparent about that. It didn't work. Oh, well, let's try something different because it is just that first try at something. So I think that has to be, it also depends what it is. So you have to have the right amount of information to know to take the risk,
Mhm.
That's
to
a
not
really
be
good
afraid to
point.
fail.
Yeah.
So like an informed risk.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest part of the process when deciding what to do and when to do it. Do I have enough information then to take this risk? Yeah, I say that's why. And not being afraid to fail, and then not, being transparent about it. That's the right way to say that.
Yeah. Well, and I think whenever it fails, like, you learn from the failure, right? So then you can try something else, so that way that doesn't happen again.
And this actually makes a lot of sense now because it really is like the duck on the water. Like Wendy is like the duck, right? And it looks like she's just super chill because she's already processed all these things underneath the surface
Yeah.
that we haven't thought of. You know what I mean? Like in order to think of that.
Yeah.
So like to us, it looks risky, but it might feel less risky, which is why it might have been kind of hard for you to come up with answers to this. Because to all of us, when we see innovation and risk taking, we're like, well, that's Wendy. But like she's thinking
Uh-huh.
things through so calculated that it doesn't seem
Because she has the
novel
information that
or
she needs to
uh-huh.
actually be able to take the risk.
Huh, this
Yeah.
all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad I provided some clarity for that.
Yeah, you did.
Good.
All right, Wendy. So, can you let us know about a bold idea that you tried and then what you learned from it? Full disclosure, Wendy told us before we recorded this. She's like, "I'm not sure I have an answer to that." Because she doesn't we just said she
Again.
doesn't realize the
And now
stuff
it
she
makes
does
sense.
is so cool. So, go ahead. However you interpret that question, however it works for you.
So I would say this when thinking about technology, and we had a little conversation about this, and this probably is a bold move, was to bring in VR headsets to our district. Several years ago, we had the opportunity to get on loan a set of 30 from the Montgomery County ESC, and they were really well received from teachers in many districts. So last year. In the spring, we decided that we would purchase a set for the CLC and Rose Academy students to use. And throughout the year last year, at the beginning of the year, we realized they really needed about 5 out there. So then we could bring 25 out to our districts again. And they, again, this year, really well received. It's kind of scary because we don't have that kind of technology in any of
Mhm.
our
Yeah.
districts. And what is this going to look like? Are teachers going to um, want to run with this? And we have several teachers who have repeatedly, they want them in their classrooms. So we are very hopeful that we'll have those 25 available again this year and try to roll it out in a little different manner to see if we can gain some more traction in some districts. We had one district, Versailles, purchase a set for their high school classrooms, and it was phenomenal to see what those students were doing with those in their classrooms. And we've got a couple others, I think, who are seriously considering what could this look like. I think it's just that what is that next step? What does this look like for
Mhm.
our teachers? What does it look like for our students? How do we get them into classrooms? I don't know every day if that's realistic, but as much as possible because we don't want it to be something where we put some money into something and it's collecting dust in the hallway.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So
Wendy, can you talk about what the students do in those headsets? For anybody that's like, what is VR? Like, what are the
Mhm.
students like? What could they possibly be doing with a VR headset?
So right now, what we have purchased is the app, Prisms app, which provides science and math content. It's a fantastic organization. They are constantly rolling out new material. In the next year, they're going to roll out modules for career
That's
exploration,
awesome.
not
Awesome.
just math and science. And they're looking at other content areas too. So right now, most of the VRs are used in math classrooms, some science classrooms. So for example, they were at Fort Recovery in a science classroom, and those kids right now they're really letting them get in and just explore modules based on their interest, but they can get in and get inside a cell. We were in one district, and one of the science teachers said she felt like Mrs. Frizzle from like what's
Yeah,
Magic
the Magic
School.
School
Magic
Bus. That's
School
what I was
Yes,
just
Bus.
thinking
Yes.
about.
because kids could physically be inside that cell and maneuvering things. So all of it is in that virtual reality world. They put on the headset and they do everything inside there, including the math or the science parts of it. Not just exploring the cell, but then what's the connection to science with that? Are they doing some sort? And science is not my background, so I'm not going to speak to this correctly, but some sort of calculations related to whatever that is. But the same thing in math. They can get right in there and do those equations, get hints and tips to help them along the way, and then do check for understandings. The teacher end is phenomenal with the teacher dashboard, seeing where kids are struggling. They can communicate within the headsets with the students from their teacher desktop computer, provide them information, and also see where they're struggling or where they're excelling, and then provide some supports on both ends.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. Well, I just love that what you're doing because people will say, how does this math concept really relate to me in real life? Or how, and
Yeah.
it brings it to life for them. Like I
That's
remember
yeah.
getting into that headset and I'm like, wow, like I'm on a glacier and it's melting. And I had to figure out like, how fast it's melting. Like, it was just so cool.
I'm even thinking how cool it would be to like build background knowledge for literacy. Like we could go to the streets of England in the 1600s if we're reading Shakespeare. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
know that we're probably a little ways out from that, but like to truly get kids to
Right.
understand a concept,
Uh-huh.
right? This is
Yes.
what it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is very bold, Wendy. That is
Yes, Wendy.
very
It
bold.
is. And it's
Thanks.
bringing like a lot of, I don't know, exploration to students that I feel like sometimes the engagement piece, they lose that. So it's bringing that engagement piece in.
And it encourages other leaders to be bold, right? Because
Yeah.
um, think of how many people would have walked towards that idea on their own, right?
Mhm.
Like, because that's scary. Like, if you're a
Mhm.
single district and like, let's buy VR headsets, people would be like, right? But we have this like consortium, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
well, because you're bold, like because you're able to bring this opportunity,
Mhm.
people are like, well, maybe I'll try, right? And then
Right.
and then there's some confidence in numbers because other people are using it, and together we can figure this out instead of somebody
Well, and I
doing it
think
on
by
their own.
you like lending them out or us lending them out, like you give them the actual experience. So a teacher would experience it like a student and they're like, oh, this isn't as
Oh,
scary as
it's
what
so
I
fun.
thought, you
Remember
know?
the irrigation, like the chemicals? That's the unit I
Oh,
did, like
yeah.
spraying chemicals on the field.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Suddenly I understood ratios and proportions in a way I've never understood them before.
Mhm.
I'm like, huh, people
Yes.
can
Yeah.
kill people if they don't know ratios and
Yeah.
proportions, right?
Right. Right. Wendy, you talked about the VR headsets. How do you help others feel safe when they try new things? Because obviously the VR headsets were something brand new. So
Yes.
how do you help people feel safe when they're trying new
Well, I think
things?
one of the biggest things that, and I think we do this as an ESC, is when you build relationships with people, you build trust. And
Mhm.
then when you have that trust, people then aren't as afraid to take a
Yeah.
risk
Mhm.
because they know that they have that relationship with you, that you'll be there to support them, whether it's a win or a flop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think highlighting things that are attempts, not
Right.
just highlighting when somebody
That's a
has a
good point.
win,
That's a really good
that this
point.
was a
Yep.
really good try. We have a couple student events every year. Well, one student event. We do two student events every year of the year. And one of the things we do is like what worked and what didn't work.
Mhm.
And we're not afraid to try something new. And if it doesn't, as a group, we just reevaluate and go back and try something different the next time. I think
Right.
always looking for that room for improvement, not being okay with the status quo.
Yeah.
So we should always be looking at, and I think like this year we tried some open lab times with our STEM teachers, place
Uh-huh.
time to maybe have conversations about what they're doing, because oftentimes in our small districts we have teachers who are the only one doing something,
Yeah.
Right.
and our STEM teachers are like that. So giving them time to talk to each other, but also can we try some things out? Some,
Mhm.
where this is risk free. Like there's no penalty if it
Yeah.
doesn't work here.
Right.
So we're trying to build our library of things like the VR headsets and similar technology items, giving people the opportunity to try those and take risks, because then it is easier to take that risk with your students if you've tried it somewhere else first.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, like we live in this, so we don't talk about it as much. But like in rural areas, that is so important because you think a lot of these teachers in urban environments have a built-in collaborative network within their district,
Right.
right? How isolating to be a single STEM teacher in a district. Like we know how it feels when you're like, am I doing any of this right? Right? Like you're like even as teachers, we've been in
Mhm.
that situation where it's like, I have no idea if what I'm doing is correct.
Right.
And then you're the only teacher in your department. So to have a space where you can come and build those networks that don't inherently happen in our districts just because of size, I think is such a powerful piece to keep people moving forward.
That collaboration
Uh-huh.
piece. Yep. And feeling safe to like, I don't know this answer, but I do know somebody that does know the answer
Right.
or that can help me with this.
So now I don't want to. I actually feel like this is a hard question. But I think you do it really well. And actually, I'm gonna go on one quick tangent real quick, and hopefully you
I
guys don't
hope
make
it's not
fun of me
about the
this time.
Titanic.
It's another podcast, but I listened to a podcast called If Books Could Kill. And they basically it's 2 guys, and you know, like, how there's, like, airport books, like, self-help books that, like, quick fix or, like they're basically airport
Mhm.
books. Like, they're meant to condense really complex topics to engage people, right? So, they were doing Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, and I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it basically talks about the power of, like, gut impressions.
Okay.
And it's basically a conglomeration of, like, studies that he pulled together, and it was one of the books that they weren't quite as hard on. Like, they're often very hard on these books, but they weren't quite as hard on this one. But anyways, they there was a study where people tried 4 different jams, and these jams had been ranked by like jam experts. I don't know who these people are, but like people, you know what I mean? Like connoisseurs of jam.
Mhm.
And they were like in the 1 through 100s, and they picked like the 54th best and the 23rd best and the 10th best, right? So there was big gaps in the differences in these qualities of jams. So they had people try them and then just had them put them in order based on which ones they thought was the best and the worst. So the people who just put them in order were actually very accurate, like not accurate, but their findings aligned very closely with the experts.
Okay.
Once they asked, they had another group who tasted them and then had to elaborate on why ones were better than the other, right? So that group was far off of the findings of the experts. And so essentially, like as soon as we ask people to explain what, like if people going with their gut or doing what's natural to them, right? And following what's natural to them, oftentimes we make the right decision. But when we have to stop and think about why we're doing what we're doing, a lot of times people then kind of like mess things up. So I think sometimes why these questions are hard for people is because they're really good at doing these things naturally. But when we ask them to sit down and explain why they do them well, they're like, I don't know, right? Because they just
Right.
do it
They just do
naturally.
it. Yeah.
So that was a really long-winded way to get to this question, right? But I think you do this really naturally and really well. So that's why I think maybe it would be hard to answer. But you like the VR headsets, right? And so I would argue we're in a time right now where there's a big chasm between like AI and technology and how much do we embrace this and how much do we stay in the traditional route of school. So how do you balance that innovation with like staying grounded in, well, this is what we've always done, right? Like how do you balance those two things together?
I think that's really hard. I The ultimate goal was to be stay student focused. If we always can remember it is about the kids, then it's easier to do that, right? But
Right.
sometimes we forget because we often let the adult problems that we have get in the way of remembering that it's about students. So I think if we can always remember to stay student focused, that makes that easier, but not easy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things in our roles is that we get to go to quite a few conferences throughout the year. And there's always something innovative and new. And we always want to try it. And
I'm
then
so excited.
I know. I'm excited right now. I'm like, when's the next conference?
I know.
but you can't throw too many things at anyone because then nothing sticks. So it's a balance of staying student focused. And then what is, right now, the discussion about AI is, we've been talking about this for 3 years. But where are we at? And it's always changing. And that's the one thing about tech. When we talk about being innovative with technology, is it's always changing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think staying grounded and that remember it's about kids will really help that balance. And not every good idea is something we should do right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That it's really.
Will you say that again to Lindsay?
Yeah, I know.
I know that you guys know me well enough. I know.
I do. We probably have both said this, but no, we just say that. No, Lindsay, we just have to tell.
Nope.
Like that's
Nope.
not a now idea. It's a great
Yes.
idea, but it's not a now idea. Because you just can't do everything, and it becomes overwhelming. And then, are we doing anything really well if we're trying all the new things?
Well, I also think that what I've learned over the past couple of years is it can take 3 to 4 years for that. Like it's like plant the seed, and then we start to learn more and more about it. And then when we're actually, it's like the rate of readiness, and we can't just jump into
Yeah,
something.
sometimes
So
it's really
I have
hard.
learned. I've learned from these two,
But you get so
Yeah.
excited. That's why
I
it's
do
hard to
get so
tell you
excited.
no. But
that's okay.
I feel like I've gotten better. Wendy's been the constant here the whole time. Because when I don't want to tell her no, guess what I tell her? Run that past Wendy.
Now I'll know. I'll know that
Why
that's
don't you
like your
call Wendy
secret
and ask
code.
Wendy? Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, we're to the joke, and Wendy came in, and she's like, Beth.
She's got her own
She
joke.
has her own joke. So
This
we're
is
going to let
great.
Wendy tell us her joke.
Have you guys ever thought about getting a horse?
No.
I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, we recently had this conversation at home, and my son said, "Yeah, I really want to get a horse." And so, natural question is like, what would you name it?
Okay.
Mayonnaise.